And we are live somewhere in the universe, reaching out with a certain amount of tenacity, and yet wrapped around that, we've got humility. So we're not too bad off as we're launching into the second to third week of February, and we've got 6 days on the horizon of 50 and 60 degree temperatures. So some would say it's global warming. Some would say it's a manifestation of the urge and desire and need for change. But wherever you are on that wavelength, we are having an unprecedented event unfold here for those of us down at the tip of Lake Michigamme. So how are you this morning, Barrett?
I'm doing pretty good, Chris. And yeah, I was just talking about the sort of interesting dynamic of enjoying the warmer weather and then having maybe a little thought of concern over what it means for the planet. But how do I know exactly? So it's interesting to just notice those different reactions and to work with them.
Well, and it's again, this world that we have created was designed to be divisive, and boy, the weather has definitely become a topic that is leading us in that direction. We've got gully washers on the west coast and heat waves in the Midwest and tornadoes in the south, and it really is kind of amping up. It's getting a little bit shrill out there. So perhaps our job is to just kind of be a brick and anchor the rest of the people around us as we go through changing and evolutionary times.
Yeah, I mean, it's all for us. It's all for our healing. So, anytime we notice any upset, anytime we notice any lack of peace within ourselves or reactionary tendencies, then we know that we're right on target. We're right where we need to be, and we can use these feelings and these thoughts to help us come into more peace. So, in a way, this is a really nice lead-in to our ongoing discussion of the laws of chaos. Which is a section in chapter 23 of the text of the course. And we're just going to kind of keep going through this because it's really helpful and relevant to everything we've been going through. So we just read a little bit about the fourth law of chaos, which is the belief that you have what you have taken. So on the level of form, that seems to be how things work. You have something because another person doesn't have it. So there's this idea of loss and gain. But on a deeper level, what Jesus is talking about here is this idea that we've taken away the peace of heaven and we don't have it anymore. So as we're kind of going on, Jesus says, what is this precious thing, this priceless pearl, this hidden secret treasure to be wrested in righteous wrath from this most treacherous and cunning enemy? It must be what you want, but never found. And now you understand the reason why you found it not, for it was taken from you by this enemy and hidden where you would not think to look. He hid it in his body, making it the cover for his guilt, a hiding place for what belongs to you. Now must his body be destroyed and sacrificed, that you may have that which belongs to you. His treachery demands his death, that you may live, and you attack only in self-defense. So here Jesus is really pointing us to this very dark thought system at the core of the ego, that that we think it's either kill or be killed. And when we look around the world, we can see this principle in action in a lot of different ways, where people really think that it's my way or the highway, and if I don't get this thing that I need, then I'm not going to be all right. So we're really looking at this very dark part of the subconscious thought system so that it can come forward and we can bring it into the light so it can be healed.
That is true. And, one of the things I find interesting that I've observed in myself as well as everybody around me is that we do tend to wrap these dark little nuggets in as much padding as we can. It's really hard when you stop and read a passage like this, relate to it in the sense of self. He hid it in his body, making it the cover for his guilt, the hiding place for what belongs to you. That starts to move in that direction of some really ugly, bloody images. And, it's easy to look at other people and identify that kind of motivation. But when we turn it around and look at ourselves, it's like, oh no, I'm not really that nasty. I'm nasty, but I'm not that nasty.
Yeah.
So we do have to be able to stand up to the ego and to confront the ego and say, no, you are just as nasty as everybody else out there. But the redemption is that none of this is real. So don't look at a passage like this and load up on guilt. Don't identify with it to the degree that you're identifying with your ego. You have to be able to step aside from that and identify with the Christ within. And to know that the ego, even as extreme as it seems at times, and even as visceral as it may appear to be, it is nothing. So it's an interesting juggling process here, where we're on a tightrope with 10 bowling pins, doing this incredible walking experience, and living in the fear of falling off the tightrope or of dropping some of the bowling pins or whatever. So it does become a real challenge if you immerse yourself in your ego, because you are going to have that guilt, you are going to have that diminishing sense of self, and that will create an open wound.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think it's good to acknowledge what you just said, that a lot of people don't really see this sort of hatred or enmity or bloodiness within their own thought system, within their own mind. And it's not always necessary to. I mean, I think eventually pretty much we all will see this, and we will allow it to be healed and released. But each of us only needs to work with whatever is in front of us. So it's a reason why when we look out at the world around us, and like you said, it's a lot easier to see these things in someone else or in some other situation, that becomes the opportunity for us to see what is within us. Because when we're upset by murder, when we're upset by torture, when we're upset by all of the kind of challenging and painful things that happen here in this world, these things are showing us that we're really upset by some version of that within ourselves. And again, we don't always need to see exactly what that is. We don't need to consciously be having a thought of wanting to murder someone. But when we can see the upset around what's happening, that gives us the avenue to do this healing work where we can release and let go of these dark and painful thoughts. So as we keep on going here, he leads us right into this last law of chaos. He says, and here a final principle of chaos comes to the rescue. It holds there is a substitute for love. This is the magic that will cure all of your pain, the missing factor in your madness that makes it sane, quote unquote. This is the reason why you must attack. Here is what makes your vengeance justified. So whenever we think that something else will bring us a sense of peace, will bring us that eternal love that is what we truly want, we're fooling ourselves. And this is a really important linchpin in the ego's thought system that keeps us searching for happiness outside in the world. It says once we get the relationship right, once we get the bank account right, once we get the right house, the right car, the right job, et cetera, then we're going to be happy. Then we're going to be okay. In those things lie our salvation. And what we're doing here is we're just questioning those ideas. We're saying, maybe that's not really where my happiness lies. Maybe that's not really the answer to the fear and the uncertainty that I have. And just by beginning to shift our perspective and our thought system around this, we start to find a greater ability to be peaceful, a greater ability to be calm, even in the times where things feel like they're not peaceful around us. And that's our ongoing journey that we're working with here.
That is very true. And as we continue with that same paragraph, he says, "He who would deprive you of the secret ingredient that would give meaning to your life." That's kind of a very potent statement. So that puts us at odds literally with everybody around us. Everybody out there is conniving and trying to keep the one thing that you need the most away from you. It says, "A substitute for love, born of your enmity to your brother, must be salvation." So it's exactly what you said. The objects that we need, even bringing it down to the most primal level of the human experience. I need that chicken leg on my plate, and if I don't get it, you're trying to deprive me of life itself. It gets very, very fundamental. The Course, I guess, in some ways, you could say, is a very fundamentalist text in that it gets down to rock bottom. And it doesn't allow us to, slither around the side and escape the actual vision that is being shared with us here. It's point blank, pull the trigger, and you really have to stop and deal with it for what it is. So it becomes very intimidating to, once you start to recognize these elements within yourself, and once you start to recognize the process that's going on within that is causing you to examine the ego, you can very easily get to a point where you need to withdraw from it for a while, where you feeling like there's an attack going on that is ultimately going to damage you. So, when we feel those things, there's nothing wrong with giving ourselves a little break and taking a breather and, step away from it for a day or two and process this information, because this is very deep.
Yeah. And as you're saying, we're looking at the fundamental issues here, the foundation of the ego thought system, and the ego doesn't really like that. Even talking about these concepts, it's not really a fun or lighthearted thing. But the thing is, we can start to see even these most dark issues from a lighter and more peaceful place. And it kind of ties into the section a little farther in the text called Above the Battleground. That if we're looking at all of this dynamic from a place where we are above it, where we're looking down and seeing what's happening, it's not as painful as if we believe we're actually on the battlefield itself. So this is the shift that we're working on doing, is going from what we think where we think we are in the battlefield, up to this sort of looking at it from above. And when we do that, all of a sudden we find we can be more peaceful, we can be more calm, we can be more gentle with ourselves. And this is the reason why this is so practical, because it really does help us maneuver through the things in our life, help us make decisions from a place of joy instead of fear, and to help us live lives that actually feel happier, even though having a certain life here is not really the goal. A certain kind of life. It's obviously we all want happiness, and I think it even ties back into. I remember hearing the Dalai Lama at one point say, what everyone from every religion or even no religious background has in common is that we all want happiness. And you could say within the context of the Course, that message is that we all have a right mind. We all have a part of us that wants to know the truth of God, that wants to feel peaceful and joyful. And we all have these really fearful parts within us as well. And the way to relinquish the fear is to look at it without judgment. And that's really why we're going into and through these sections here. As Jesus keeps going on a little further, he says, these are the laws on which your sanity appears to rest. These are the principles which make the ground beneath your feet seem solid. And he means that one very literally. These thoughts of the ego thought system are what make this world seem solid and real. And that as we begin to undo them, we start to have a different experience of life. We start to feel more and more that we're actually moving through a dream. And there's a real benefit to that, again, because it helps us to not be so wrapped up in the story of what's happening here in our lives. And the more we can do that, again, the more we can be happy no matter what is unfolding here.
Very true. There are always lines that you read in your journey through life that stick with you. And for me, apart from the movie and the book and everything else, that one statement, the incredible lightness of being, is something that has always been, I guess you could say, an aspiration, a goal. It's a vision that for the last 15 or 20 years has always come back like the echo of a bell that rung very, very true for me at some point in my life. And that really is what we're being directed toward here, is to step out of the active life, the participation part of life, and to step into simply being the presence, being with life, and becoming that universal life that extends itself beyond space and time. And I'm sure that a lot of people have got similar, thoughts that can become an anchor. And there's certainly nothing wrong with making that a personal mantra when you notice yourself getting too seriously involved in the things that are going on around you, and having the belief that you have to fix it, you have to go out and rally, you have to go out and burn something down to stop the onslaught. If you can just get back up to that height, you'll discover there is an incredible lightness in being. And that lightness is like this gentle breeze that comes in off the ocean on a warm day. And it carries you through to the next day, and the day after that, and the day after that. Going forward here with some more of this, we've got, but what is it you want that needs his death? Can you be sure your murderous attack is justified unless you know what it is for? And here, a final principle of chaos comes to the rescue. It holds there is a substitute for love. This is the magic that will cure all of your pain, the missing factor in your madness that makes it sane. This is a reason why you must attack. Here is what makes your vengeance justified. Behold, unveiled, the ego's secret gift, torn from your brother's body, hidden there in malice and in hatred for the one to whom the gift belongs. So that really turns things around when you're a person who is heavily invested in your cause. if you look at that kind of investment on the granite foundation that it is established on, whenever you're out there fighting for other people's rights, even though we put a lot of decoration around that idea that we're doing good, we have to go beyond our altruism and look at the depth of what's going on.
Yeah, I think it always reminds me of that very simple line that Jesus repeats again and again, which is, what is it for? So, if you're going out there and marching because you feel the love of God and want to join with your brother in love, then that's beautiful. But if you're going out there marching because there's a desire to attack back people who you feel are attacking you, or to struggle against something that it feels painful, there may be a desire in you to reinforce this idea of separation. And I think we can do quote unquote loving things or quote unquote unkind things from a place of separation and attack. So it's never about the form of what we're doing. It's only ever about who we're letting be our teacher. Are we letting Jesus teach us the message of love and kindness? Or are we letting the ego teach us that something is wrong and that we are sinful and ashamed and afraid? So you could say that it's always about the perspective that we're holding, not about the actual steps that we're taking.
Yeah, it goes deeper and deeper into a labyrinth of twists and turns when we really start looking at it, because the ego loves to complicate and obscurificate things. So if we're listening to the ego, it will give us one after another of infinitude of absolutely valuable and uncontestable reasons for whatever our actions are. But if we look at spirit, spirit is going to show up and give us that one answer to every situation that we're encountering, and that is to be able to take the hate out of it and fill it with love, and get back up on our cloud and float over it instead of getting muddy in the battlefield.
Yeah. So, yeah, just to kind of skip ahead a little bit here down to number 14. No one wants madness, nor does anyone cling to his madness if he sees that this is what it is. What protects madness is the belief that it is true. It is the function of insanity to take the place of truth. It must be seen as truth to be believed. And if it is the truth, then must its opposite, which was the truth before, be madness now. So this is what we do. We really get everything completely backwards. And he's helping us to see this here. He says, such a reversal, completely turned around, with madness, sanity, illusions, true, attack, a kindness, hatred, love, and murder, benediction, is the goal the laws of chaos serve. These are the means by which the laws of God appear to be reversed. Here do the laws of sin appear to hold love captive, and let sin go free. So what we're really doing is we're starting to see more clearly. We're starting to see that every time we have a judgment of someone else, that we're holding ourselves captive. And every time we think that something in this world is the answer, we're actually saying that love is not the answer. And we need to be really kind of clear about this. And obviously we're not saying to not do things in the world, do whatever it is that you want to do, but just, again, ask yourself, what is it for? And be really willing to listen to what the answer is, because it's not always easy for us to see what our true motivation is. but we can tune into it more and more if we're really willing to listen to that message from within.
Yes, it's always there for us, and it actually becomes a balm. You know, that old image of the balm of Gilead that soothes the saddened and war-torn soul. And it's interesting how, as we continue here, it says, "These do not seem to be the goals of chaos, for by the great reversal they appear to be the laws of order." That, I think, is a beautiful statement around most sacred text. You know, you go back and look at the Bible, the Course draws heavily on certain parts of the Bible. But when you look at the Bible or the Quran or pretty much anything out there, the Gita, you have that, again, the effect of duality. So you have God that shows up being merciless and vengeful and wrathful. You have all these different processes going on that are leading you down, once again, that idea of a labyrinth, trying to figure out who you are and where you are and what you're doing. And the beauty of A Course in Miracles is that it's pretty much 99.9% of the time completely unpolluted. It is, it is the pure and loving answer to every situation that we encounter. So that's a way to get your sense of being on track. Are you drawing from things that are dualistic, and it's very easy to recognize that dualism, or are you going back over and over again and getting your sustenance from a source that is 99.999%, 100% pure?
Yeah, and I think it really just points to the idea that there's always a choice. And I think the real value in some of these sections where we talk about the ego so thoroughly is that it makes the choice very stark. It helps us to see even more the differences between the two thought systems, the thought system of love and kindness and the thought system of fear and pain. And the more we see this, the more that we want to choose happiness, the more that we want to choose joy, the more that we want to take Jesus's hand as we walk through our lives and say, I want to be with you. I want to know your love. And we realize that his love is our love, is God's love, that there really is no meaningful distinction. As Jesus says elsewhere, that the Trinity, all the three parts of the Trinity are one, that there is no real Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, even though he uses a lot of these terms in the Course. It's really a literary device to help us eventually get to the experience of that oneness. And it's helpful as long as we think we're a separate person to ask for help from a separate person. But eventually we'll come to see that there is no separate person, because there's never actually been a person at all. There's only ever been love. There's only ever been truth. There's only ever been joy. And again, as we look at these sort of mists of the ego thought system, they're shown away in the light of truth. And that's really what we're doing here, is we're continuing to bring everything, every question, every uncertainty, every sort of shadow of doubt to this light. And just like any shadow that we would bring to the light, the shadow will disappear. And we'll come to know that the light is really all that really is.
Yes, and that light is actually starting to grow, I think, globally, and perhaps that's part of the turmoil that we're seeing in the world around us right now. We're seeing a real contested kind of process unfold here, where things seem to be becoming more shrill, but it's simply the apocalypse, the unveiling, the lifting of the veil. We are looking beyond the illusion, and given that opportunity, the real core of our primary problem, our primary dysfunction resides, and it always leads right back to our own front door.
Yeah. I think that's a beautiful message for us to kind of start to wrap up for today. So we appreciate you guys being here with us and listening to these messages from the course. And both Chris and I do one-on-one sessions too. So if you're ever interested in kind of going deeper, for me, the easiest way to do that is to check out my website, which is www.barretthedin.com. Chris, what's the best way for them to get a hold of you?
Yes, well, in addition to Facebook, my website is One Feather Journal, OneFeatherJournal.com. And there's a plethora of Native American stuff, as well as a services page. And stop on by. There will be some minutia there that will capture your imagination.
Well, it's really been a beautiful joining with you this morning, Chris. And I think the dog is taking us on out.
Yes, I'm going to go thrash the dog so before he eats the mailman. So have a wonderful week, Barrett, and I'll talk to you soon.
All right, sounds good. Bye, Chris.
Bye.